Welcome to She's the Boss, the podcast where female wellness entrepreneurs talk ambition, money, and ownership out loud. I'm your host, Lee McSwan, a certified holistic nutritionist turned wellness business coach. This is where conversations are unfiltered, the rules of entrepreneurship get rewritten, and nothing is off limits. Money, motherhood, friendships, legacy, wealth, power, and what it really takes to build a life and business on your terms. If you're avoiding sales conversations, your business is paying for it, not because you don't believe in what you do, but because nobody ever taught you how to sell in a way that actually feels like you. Sales Confidence is a 4-week program that changes that. Each week, new content drops so you learn, apply it immediately, and start seeing the shift in real time. You'll learn how to speak about your offers with clarity, handle objections without second-guessing yourself, and close conversations in the DMs and on discovery calls without any of the gross feeling that's been keeping you stuck. The women who come through this don't just get better at selling, they start to love it. That shift alone changes everything about how much you earn and how you show up in your business. Jump in now. The link is in the show notes. Today's guest is someone who walked into this field through her own story and her own lived experience, which already tells you she's the kind of therapist who actually gets it. Natalie Frey is a licensed marriage and family therapist specializing in DBT, which we will explain in this episode, EMDR, ACT, inner child work, and schema therapy. She works with individuals, couples, and families, helping them reduce anxiety, heal from trauma, and build healthier relationships, starting with the one they have with themselves. She's warm, she's trauma-informed, and fair warning, she's funny. You're going to love this conversation, so grab your collagen coffee or creatine water and let's sit down and talk to today's guests. Okay. Natalie, welcome to She's the Boss. How are you doing today?
Hi, thank you so much. I'm doing great. How about you?
I'm doing amazing. I am so excited for our conversation today. I feel like you are living a life that I had logistically mapped out for myself before I got into the weeds of going to school and changing directions completely. So I'm really excited to talk about your work, what you do, who you help, your experience as an entrepreneur. But let's go back a little bit. What got you interested in your current field of work and why did you become a therapist?
So it's lived experience. At a very young age, I was actually misdiagnosed with bipolar at an age that probably young ones should not be diagnosed with such a, with anything. But for several years, I was on tons and tons of medication. I really didn't have a social development. It was really hard. I feel like I missed out on a lot of different childhood milestones, different things like that. And then going into high school, I think it was around 9th grade, my doctor, and it was probably like my 12th doctor at this point, was like, I don't think you were ever bipolar. Got assessed and it turned out to be ADHD, major depressive disorder, and generalized anxiety disorder, which looking at the symptomology could look like that maybe in some ways as a young kiddo. But yeah, I remember that summer being the first time I think my family, especially my younger sister too, seeing who I was. It was a summer, I call it summer withdrawals, because I was coming off of, I think I was taking 12 meds in the morning, 12 at night. I was coming off of all of those different meds and all of a sudden blossomed into this, go better, I guess you could say. I got relationship wise, friendship wise, school wise. I think my parents were always told that it's going to be really difficult for me in life. I may not get to X, Y, and Z, but I did. And I went from doctor to psychiatrist and never a therapist. And so being a minor at the time, I really didn't have a voice or someone to, what's going on with you? It was my parents' charts, my parents this, my parents that, and not to fault them, but there's no rule book, guidebook for any of this. They're doing what the doctors say. And it caused a big issue in my life. Even once I was off the meds, making social connections was hard. I didn't know developmentally, like, who to gravitate towards. I ended up gravitating towards toxic people who really didn't have my best interests at heart. And it was a learning, a therapist of mine, actually, once I started going to therapy, said people come into your life and they're either a blessing or a lesson. And I definitely use that in my practice to this day. So, yeah.
Wow, that's really incredible. When did you realize that you were surrounded by people that didn't have your best interest at heart, and how did you move away from them?
Honestly, it was, well, my parents were high school sweethearts, and I got into a relationship for almost all of high school that was not the greatest relationship. And I was stuck on the almost like this. I have to be a high school sweetheart too. This is what's right. This is what was modeled to
Mm.
me. And so I missed out on a lot of other things because of that. And I think it was like a typical experience of needing to be burned the right amount of times, right? To be able to realize, okay, it was your typical abusive, toxic relationship of the honeymoon period, things are okay, then this and this, and then that cyclical thing. And it turned into also a self-worth issue of I started going to college while I was in high school. So I was always like at this level and trying to
Wow.
bring the person ended up being with always to the same level by like doing the things for them, doing all the stuff. And then, you know, it ended up the real work with a lot of that happened when I met my now husband. I was so intimidated when I met him because we were at the same level, everything I could have ever wanted, but now I had it. And I was like, oh my God, what is he gonna, what can I do now? I can't do anything. Like, where's my worth? I'm not gonna be enough if he can also be a functioning human like I can. So it was a huge learning curve for me. And that's, I think, where a lot of that deep work and trauma work ended up happening for me. But a lot of, unfortunately, trial and error. My dad actually used to call my relationships my projects because it was almost like I always had to like fix, help, be the person. And I think that's also just part of who I am. Like I'm that friend that's like, let me be there. I got you. But I think I've learned realistic and healthier boundaries with doing that now. Again, this was over a decade, like a long time ago with all of these different things. I do think it adds up with not having the certain social developmental things that I maybe missed out on. Had to learn the hard way. But hey, I mean, these experiences help me connect with my population and everyone I work with. So lived experience is an asset.
Did you always know after you went through your own experience with a therapist that was the path that you wanted to take, or did you realize that later on?
I once had a psychiatrist because I'm pretty artsy. I'm not an artist. I'm artsy.
Okay.
And mentioned something about art therapy. And then I started doing research on that and took some psych classes while I was in high school, in like college classes. And I fell in love with it. Later found that I was not going to do art therapy because I very much do not have originals. I have no, I have pottery that I've painted and
Love.
designed and things like that. I just fell in love with how the mind works. It's so unique. It's relatable. And once you can understand the function of things, it's validating. It made me feel seen. And I had this just urge to, I never had the person, that safe space to talk to as a young kid. And I just so badly wanted and continue to want to be that space for people. Nothing against psychiatrists, but I think their therapy's different. And
Mm.
I do reflect sometimes and wonder what it would have looked like if I had that space. Obviously, everything happens for a reason, and I'm grateful for everything. It all happened how it's supposed to. But I think after that doctor said that, and I did more research, I made it my life's goal for people to feel like they have a space, or if it's 1 hour a week where you feel like you can just say whatever, like that's a win for me. And I want that for people because I am living, like I didn't have that. So yeah.
We're often creating from the place of the thing that we needed or we wished was there for us. Even if it already exists, we may not know that. And so we get to create from this really beautiful, authentic, original space, which I love. So after you graduated from school, where did you start working? What did that part of your life look like before becoming an entrepreneur?
So yeah, with grad school, you have to have a certain amount of therapy hours working with clients in order to graduate, and then you continue after. So in order to be licensed as an LMFT, licensed marriage and family therapist in California, you earn 3,000 hours to be able to take a test, to be licensed. And so I started off while I was in grad school, and then after I graduated too, at a community mental health program in Burbank, California, Family Service Agency of Burbank. A fantastic, fantastic resource. learned a bunch there, worked primarily with youth and some families, crisis intervention, ADHD, PTSD, child abuse and neglect. So learned earlier on with, about some of those severe cases and things. Actually, before that, before I was even, I think, in grad school, I did some work with ABA, Applied Behavioral Analysis, working with children and families with autism and intellectual disabilities. So I already had that, I've always connected with children well. I've always, been excited to be a mom one day and things like that. So I've always connected with little kiddos. I think I'm youthful and I can from babysitting, knowing the different things, I'm able to pull from things, but also reel it back in when needed. So I started off with a lot of that type of work, eventually moved into a treatment program world where I started off as a primary therapist, working in a partial hospitalization and intensive outpatient program. That's where I think I got the bulk of my experience. I quickly got promoted to being a manager of that program, and then also working with the residential program. So you're seeing people right out of the hospital. You're seeing people who, this is the step above normal therapy. They're there multiple times a week. You're case conceptualizing, treatment planning, you're running groups. So this is where I learned dialectical behavioral therapy, which I've now become certified in. I love it. It is my favorite and most used modality. But yeah, there's like the mixing pot I'm talking about. There's PTSD, there's some schizophrenia, there's personality disorders, anxiety, depression, you name it. And then there's a psychoeducation component for families and consulting with families or caregivers. And I loved that part because that's important. My family didn't have, it's a helpful way to help families and caregivers speak the same language as their loved one. So there's that. And that treatment center ended up getting acquired. And the clinical director, and I was the program manager at the time, ended up talking with me because we were wanting to create a track for thought disorders, because thought disorders, the milieu, the people that are in the program, we're at different levels of functioning. So putting someone at that level, going through what they're going through in the same room as a bunch of other people that bringing up things that they're not the same level. So they're not speaking the same language, right? You want to make sure they're getting everything out of it. We ended up creating a treatment center for psychosis, still around to this day. One of the coolest things I've ever done, huge passion of mine. Schizophrenia, first episode psychosis, bipolar, all the different things. Such individualized, unique care. And I was doing that, and I'm earning hours all at the same time, right? So I'm what's called an associate at that time before being licensed. And so I'm still earning hours, still doing these things. And I ended up also finding this other supervisor that was helping associate therapists learn how to create a private practice. And I was like, oh my gosh, never learned this. So while I was creating this other treatment program, this is how I was learning the back end of different things. They put me through a whole marketing course, and I was like, oh my gosh, didn't know there was such thing as a marketing funnel. I didn't know about all of this. So I was learning a whole bunch of different things. And I think the thing that really got me into this was I had to make a therapy Instagram, and I had to do a 30-day challenge of posting something every single day. Mm-hmm. And that I really think helped me notice what I was super interested in, because I had to make posts about things that I was interested in, and I had to show myself doing those things. So it was really interesting because I was learning a bunch of stuff tailored to psychosis and for, those types of things, comprehensive care, and also building this at the same time. So it was really cool learning how to network, market, do these things, getting and that started to build some confidence too. I did have the imposter syndrome of, oh my gosh, I'm never going to be able to do this. What am I going to do? I'm always going to want to be a part of a group practice. I don't think I'll ever be able to, because I didn't have that confidence in myself. And eventually the treatment program was up and running. We got clients in there. I basically ran that program. I created a lot of the materials, the group materials, the home, a lot of the different things, the topics. I trained almost every single employee that was there, was a part of hiring. It was such a beautiful and great experience for me. And eventually I started, you'll hear me talk about my ADHD a ton, but I always say I bite off more than I can chew. And I'm super eager. And while I love wearing 27,000 hats, it catches up with anyone. So I was getting more referrals in my private practice. I was doing these other things and basically working from 7 a.m. to almost 10 every night. My husband at the time was also in law school. So we were hardly seeing each other, hardly connecting, taking on, and this is also, I think, during COVID, parts of this. So there
Oh
was so
gosh.
much going on. Yeah. And at some point I was finding more joy with having the creative flexibility in my practice to have not such an one size fits all approach. I have that in my practice, whereas treatment centers, sometimes there's the policies, this like there's certain ways of doing things. And while I completely agree with that, I think that's appropriate. I'm a little creative and I like to think outside of the box. And sometimes in my private practice, I have that freedom to be that person, be in charge of that and making that decision. And it's done nothing but benefit my clients. So I love that. And I think I've worked super hard to be able to have this work-life balance I never really got. Like now I can go to Pilates, I can go meditate, I can do the yoga, I can do this. And then also like have my client, like I can make my life in the way that like I've always, that works best for me and my neurospicy head and
Neurospicy head. I love that.
yeah, all the things. So yeah, I think it was just a bunch of different things that came to a head and it was just my time.
Yeah, for sure. Do you think you would have got to the point that you're at today if you didn't have that business mentor?
I think eventually. I think her name is Sam. She is such a gem. I don't know if I would be as successful at this point. I think I owe a lot to her. I invited her to my wedding. Like she is such
Oh,
an amazing component of what's made me, and I'm just so thankful for her. That's the business part that no one knows about, and I strive to want to be like her. One day when I am a supervisor taking on associates, in the place that I was in, I want to be able to help and use that knowledge and pay it forward.
I love that so much. Okay, you got really excited about DBT. Can you explain
Yes.
what this is? Because I've actually never heard of it and I love everything psych related.
Oh, girl, okay. You ready?
Let's go. Yes.
Let's go.
Let's go.
So DBT stands for dialectical behavioral therapy. It is based on the dialectic of acceptance and change. So in order to kind of create the change you want to see, we have to accept things in our reality, even if we don't like it. It is so uniquely tailored to an individual. There's 4 different modules of DBT so I can name them. There's core mindfulness. So it really looks at what are you doing? How are you doing it? Are you showing up with judgment? Are you able to look at things for what they are? How are you observing, describing, and participating in the world? Like, are you able to kind of be in the moment? Are you noticing the urge to be elsewhere? How do you bring yourself back? It also involves a lot of self-compassion. So love and kindness towards yourself. Being able to radiate that towards yourself is what's going to help you radiate that out into the world. Especially we hold grudges, people do mean things. Being able to reflect and do that is really important. And that's like that first part there. The next part is distress tolerance. So kind of what it sounds like, learning to tolerate the distress
Mhm.
rather than acting on it. These are distraction based skills. So the difference, distraction and avoidance, there's an intent to revisit it just at a better level, a better mental level. And so a lot of these things involve temperature to snap yourself out of things. It involves sensory tools. It involves breathing, intense exercise. There's so many different things that you can use as distractions to, hey, this is existing with this, right? I'm going to accept this emotion and I'm going to do the other thing. A lot of the DBT verbiage involves using the word and both rather than but or.
Mm.
So there's a lot of that. There's also a module called emotion regulation. This is where you're kind of still able to, you're not too far into the distress where you're only in what's called emotion mind. You're able to kind of balance emotion and reason and logic. But that reason and logic window is getting smaller and smaller where it could go into that distress range. So you have a little bit of it. So you're still kind of in a place of being able to check your facts. Like, is what I'm feeling justified, or the severity of what I'm feeling justified given the situation? If so, what do I do? If not, what do I do? Is it effective to act on this? This is where we make very specific goals that are achievable. This is also where we look at DBT uses a lot of acronyms. So there's a skill called the please skill, which involves how your body impacts your mind, how your mind impacts your body. So taking care of all of those things. And you're able to kind of have that awareness to label and identify what's coming up. Whereas maybe in the stress tolerance range, you're too far into that emotion. Basically, to sound like a nerd really quickly, your prefrontal cortex, like that front part of your brain. Have you seen the movie Inside Out?
Oh yeah, I have. The kid movie? Yeah.
Yes. This is how I think our brains actually work. So I picture it as that part, the part of your brain kind of shuts off. Everyone, they sleep, all those little characters are gone for the day, right? That means, though, another part of our brain, the amygdala, starts shooting up all these different things because there's nothing to tell it. Oop, this is a good idea. This is a bad idea. So this is when we make some ineffective decisions, right? So, using, abusing, violence, double texting, yelling, whatever the problem behavior is, we don't have anything to be like, oop, let's look at that. But maybe that's not a great idea. So that part of your brain kind of shuts off. The thing about the DBT skills is that it's tailored to where you're at with distress. So that kind of explains how those, what range you're at. And then the last module is called interpersonal effectiveness. This is somewhere you'd want to be on a lower end, definitely. And when it comes to distress, this is where you can advocate for yourself, asking for what you want, what you need. This is where you take self-respect into account. Like, how do you apologize or communicate, but not put yourself on the back burner? How can you communicate and be honest and truthful and not apologize to or take responsibility for things you're not responsible for? It also goes over relationship effectiveness. So levels of validation, how to show someone you're interested, communicating without any attacks, threats, being gentle. It all is basically just effective communication when you're wanting something, needing something, making a request, whether it's for yourself or relationship. It's a really helpful general framework of how to just communicate, honestly, interpersonal communications and being effective communicating. And so those are the 4 modules. There's different skills within each of the modules that you can teach someone given where they're at. And I think it is life-changing. I think it was life-changing for me. My supervisor, when I was first learning it, was like, you need to practice one skill every single day. And I had a timer on my phone, would practice every single day. And Marsha Linehan, the person that created this, she always, says 2 things. You're doing your best and you can always do more. And she mentions practicing these skills when you're not in distress makes them 10 times more effective when you are. So you're building a habit. So a lot of the times when I'm teaching these things, it's, I don't need this right now. But right when you're in a crisis or you're in a situation where you may not be effective, guess what? Your brain's not going to go from this to this immediately. There's now another option that you can choose. You have a choice because you can press play and you know what's going to happen the other way. Why not? So yeah, I can keep going. I love DBT. It's amazing.
It's almost like having a first aid kit or a fire extinguisher on hand. You may have to rely on it one day, so why not just have it prepped and ready to go? How do you incorporate EMDR with DBT? Because I feel like there's probably a specific spot that EMDR would fit in with these 4 modules of DBT.
So I actually, if someone's going to do EMDR, I like to understand what their coping skills are first and see how they actually apply them. If they are maladaptive coping skills, not effective coping skills, there's a lot of different things that can come up during EMDR that if you don't have the right skills, you may not be able to sit with it, handle it. And that could actually disrupt a lot of the progress with EMDR. So I like to make sure the client and I are speaking the same language. So if we're in the middle of something, we need to use a skill or do something or prep or cope ahead, they have those skills to deal with it. Whenever I finish EMDR, I always have the client do a body scan. I incorporate some DBT skills in that as well, some sensory skills, breathing. One of the DBT skills is also a part of it is paired muscle relaxation. So tensing and releasing, re-regulating your nervous system, the parasympathetic, sympathetic, like all of those different things. There's so many different angles of the DBT skills. But yeah, I learned this also that when I was working in the treatment world, that most of the clients wouldn't be there if they had these skills, right? So we're giving you these skills so that you can go on to the next step at the lower level of care. And that's why they end up in these spaces, because they don't have the skills, they're not practicing the skills, or they just don't know them. And so I think it's really important, given the unknowns that could come up. You never know what your brain is trauma blocking or protecting you from, what's in the subconscious that can come out. It's really important to me. And I feel it also makes the client feel safe and cared for too, that, oh my God, this thing comes up, I'm going to feel prepared, not what do I do? And I think that's a huge rewarding experience for the client as well.
I love that. And it makes perfect sense. I want to ask your opinion on you've worked with a high needs population, a very vulnerable population. And so I can only imagine how much energetic leakage those people can bring into your personal life. For those people who are listening, who are the wellness practitioners, the nutritionists, the holistic care providers, they may also be working with vulnerable people or have massive energetic leaks with certain clients. What have you learned along the way to equip yourself and prevent a difficult day with a vulnerable or high needs client from coming home with you, or maybe even talking a little bit about setting up boundaries when we have an individual that either wants access to us or is over resourcing us? Kind of go off on that.
Yeah, definitely something I've experienced because a lot of times when I'm teaching clients different things, they meet urgency of a situation with their own urgency. And so they don't know how to deal with it until we learn the skills. With higher acuity populations, it is harder to teach that certain skills because of their level of functioning at times. I really like to always have a cope ahead or safety plan put into place that they have with them, caregivers have with them, housing places have with them, just so everyone knows the plan if X, Y, and Z does come up. So they always have it's education, it's speaking the same language. And so making sure that's something that's there. Another thing is it's hard because it's like, how do you not take the hat home with you? How do you leave it in the office when you leave, right? And I think a lot of what I've had to learn is you're meeting the client where they're at, right? If you can't work harder than the client, you got to meet them where they're at and understand that if things happen or if they need you've got to have the boundary, because not having the boundary, it's almost like you're not helping them by breaking the boundary. It's almost like it's not kind. Answering the phone after hour, doing that, taking that home with you is this one, it's communicating, this is okay, I'm accessible to you always. And two, it's not helping them use the skill that's going to help them tolerate or cope with the distress until the next day that they see you. Those are what those skills are meant for. So I really like understanding where the client's at functioning wise and figuring out, and that's why I love this in my practice. Whereas there's certain skills in treatment centers that they're just not going to be able to do. I think I'm able to pull from so many different things and adapt and mold stuff into what would be workable for the client. And so it feels like maybe it's not the ultimate goal, but it's like I can do this and I can still be okay. Right. I don't know if that answers your question, but it's very much it's boundaries and making sure people are on the same page, not just the client, because if a client's in distress, especially high acuity, usually the people around are going to be the ones that are helping intervene and things like that. But I also always have on a safety plan or a cope ahead plan resources for after hours. I always identify a friend, a family member, and a professional to contact, closest contact lines, helplines, resources. I always include that. And it's always tailored to where the client is, their area, their address, like wherever they are. So they have location-wide resources that are not just, okay, now I have to do this whole thing. And everyone around them knows that these are things that have been discussed, worked, and agreed upon.
Yeah, I agree with you. It was Melissa Urban who I first heard that kind of term, boundaries are kind, and they really actually help you create a better relationship with whether it's your client or a family member or friend or whatever. It's definitely a really beautiful lens that you look through, where you're looking through a lens of empowering the client to help themselves. And I think this is a really important message for listeners, because we get into this line of work. Any practitioner loves people. They love helping people. Suffering breaks our hearts. We feel it so deeply. But you also said something else really important, and that was that you can't work harder than the client. You can't want it more than they do. And I think this really goes into the next piece of conversation that I want to have with you, and that's working in a field like therapy. And I can say from nutrition, it's the same deal, where you are basically trained to undercharge and over deliver. Did you recognize that pattern within yourself, and how did you break it?
Yeah, definitely. I think it was definitely more in the treatment center world that you see that there's such a need. I think the other side of it is, okay, yeah, it's not maybe what it should be. And it's consistent. So that kind of outweighs other things. Whereas if you go into private practice, you're kind of on your own, there's the ebbs and flows of things. I think what helped me with that is once I got licensed, there was like a new level of confidence that I had. I think some of the imposter syndrome went away enough for me to be able to take the jump. I had enough client, I think for me it was like I I had to get to this point with myself of like it's almost like a now or never, because there was a possibility of having a life, not having to work 7 to 10, and having a better quality of life, making even more and not working as hard, and also doing the stuff that I'm right now having more joy in. I have yet to look back. It was one
It,
of the best
it
decisions I've made.
it's such an interesting mindset shift, isn't it? When you realize that you can actually improve your income while doing less. It sounds
Yeah.
counterproductive, but it actually helps so much. And yeah, it's literally also money aside. It is about loving your life. We've got one shot at this. We have to
Yeah.
love the thing that we're doing. And I feel personally, conversations like this really help highlight the fact that it is possible. There may not be sunshine and rainbows every single day that you sit at your desk. And, there's always the back end admin stuff that we all kind of like, hate doing. But also knowing that's short term. There's only a short window of time where you have to do that yourself. And then you get to hire that out. Have you had to give up the reins, so to speak, and start hiring people to help you and support you in order to grow your business?
Bookkeeping wise, yes. There is no way in the world having to resource things. I'm actually considering in the future looking into social media management as well, just because I'll go into like these random these bursts of like post, and then it's like you don't see
Yeah.
me for 5 years. And then it's so I want to keep up with all these other areas, and it's acceptance, I guess you could say. It's like this is what it is. I can't do all the things. I don't want to be in a space again where I'm wearing all the hats. I want to do what I'm passionate about, really good at, and outsource where I can. And that's what I'm looking into. I also one day want to be a supervisor and hire other clients as well, which can help take other clients, other things that come in, inquiries. There's more people, more accessibility. So that's something as well.
One last question that I wanted to ask you. Okay. So mental health has had a massive cultural moment, as I'm sure you're hyper aware of, and
Mm-hmm.
everyone's talking about the importance of therapy, nervous system work, trauma, but very few are doing the actual clinical work like yourself. How do you stand out in an era where there's a ton of noise? People are doing weekend courses and calling themselves healers. What is your kind of take on all that?
I think the clients and the people I'm supposed to work with are the ones that end up reaching out, not trying to jinx anything, but almost every single person I get on the phone and have a consultation with ends up converting into a client. I think it's honestly just the conversation and feeling heard. I think that anyone can put online. I think judging a book by its cover, judging something by its cover goes both ways, right? You don't want to see something but just because you see something doesn't mean it's actually what it is. I also had another supervisor that said you'll soon see sometimes the letters behind someone's name doesn't always mean they're great at what they do. And
Yeah.
I've learned that. And I think what's meant to be will be. And word of mouth is everything too. Everyone that I meet, everyone that I talk to about my story, my why, my reason, my population, I try to communicate in a way that sticks with people, because I've had people tell me their stories that stick with me, and it makes me remember, it makes me want to refer, it makes me want to do those things. And so I think it really comes back to the conversation and someone having that space. And I think sooner, whether it's at the beginning or not, someone will be able to tell whether work's getting done or not. Meaning, if they're going to someone who did a weekend course and did X, Y, and Z, you know, whether it's in the moment or there's delayed consequences, facts are going to show. That's just, it's part of life. It's part of life. I think that there's a reason schooling takes long. There's a reason certificates are certificates. There's a reason that specialties are specialties. And there's a reason there's a cost for those things, because people are putting in time, putting in effort. EMDR was not a weekend. EMDR was almost a whole
Right.
year. It's the people that are actually invested and willing to do the work find you. I believe in that.
Yeah. I totally do as well too. There is some sort of law of attraction that happens,
Hmm.
and word of mouth and a referral based business, that is the gold standard for me. If you are
Yeah.
somebody that has your clientele coming through referrals or somebody just knowing you on a personal level and saying, this woman could really transform your life. There's nothing better in the world. And that
Yeah.
genuinely is a possibility if we're putting ourselves out there and we're working within the population that really we love supporting, right? We have to love what we're doing in order for us to be exceptional at it. And so I
Absolutely.
love that piece. And I do think that you're right, that your people will find you. They will always find you. There's no shortage of clients waiting to work with you. And it's just a matter of being accessible to them.
Right.
Natalie, this was such a beautiful conversation. I could honestly talk to you for the rest
Oh,
of the day, but
let's do
I won't.
it.
Okay. All right. Let's clear our schedules for the rest of the
Yeah.
day.
Done.
I would love for people to be able to find you because I think the work that you do is truly unique. And I think you have such a beautiful energy about you and you have so much real world experience. You have an empathy from an experience that makes you probably that much better of a therapist today. So let people know where they can connect with you and where they can find you.
First, thank you so much for those kind words and for having me on. It's been a pleasure. Yeah, my website's the best way to reach me. It's www.empatheticinsights.com. Not empathic, empathetic insight. And yeah, that has a link to my email, my work phone, my Instagram, any way to reach me there.
Love that. And we're going to put a special promo code into the show notes for you, along with Natalie's website, so that if you do want to work with her as a listener of the show, you can get a special little something something. So all that will be linked below. Thank you so much for being here. It was an absolute pleasure.
Likewise, thank you.